Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. So Amit, I'll let him go into a little bit of, I'll let him go in depth with his business, but he was a very, very early adopter of DTF technology. He's, it's what, 3-4 years?
Almost 4.
Yeah, almost 4 years. And he has the largest fleet in Canada of DTF machines. He started in the early eras before there was Japanese technology such as Mimaki. So he's running a lot of the Chinese machines. As you guys have already seen, the Chinese machines are very differently built than the Mimaki technology. But a lot of people here have the Chinese machines. And with the Chinese equipment, it's uncharted territory. We're always learning, and every shop we go into, someone's doing something else, and another shop's doing something else. Everyone's trying to find what works for them. It's kind of like screen printing. You don't go into one shop and everyone's doing the exact same thing, right? So we wanted to have a meet up here because a lot of people who are planning on coming to the event had said, hey, listen, I'm running the Chinese equipment, and there's a lot of questions that I have, and I'd like to get some technical advice on that as well. So that's why I invited Amit here.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, definitely. And there's certain things here that Amit has learned over years, again, of trial and error, right? So he's going to be going over some stuff's going to be general related that would apply to Mimaki as well. But then there's certain things that he's figured out that work for his business. For example, with the Epson i3200 printheads, which is the majority of what these Chinese machines are running, the industrial ones at least. So some of his tips and strategies are not necessarily things that we're saying, hey, go ahead and do. It's what works for him, and we want him to give his experience. Yeah, we hope that we want to make this very, we want you guys to really interact with us. So ask as many questions as you possibly can. I know my phone and the texts, they're constantly ringing. People are asking questions, and we're passing along and trying to get information. So really use this as an opportunity to dig into someone who literally lives and breathes this technology, and try and get all the questions out they could possibly think of, okay? And we're also gonna have Steven here as well, next to me. Steven's one of our technicians. As much as I'd love to say I know everything about the technology, I definitely don't want to get super technical. So anything that is more Mimaki related, if you guys have a question, then we'll pass that on to Steven. That's it, I think we're good to go. Do you want to just give a little bit of insight in your business and what you do and your experience so far?
So, morning. We started with DTF in the lieu of looking digital prints should be a go-to point for printing on apparel, mostly t-shirts, right? So we started looking for DTF, and the solution first, and then we came across DTF. That was back in early 2021. We landed on this Chinese printer we thought would be a good option, and we just went on, and here we are. We have almost 40 printers in-house. Our turnaround is something I boast about. It's 24 hours or less, and yeah, we're super quick. So we're gonna go over the regular or general issues people face with DTF, and we're gonna go each topic at a time, and then after every topic, I'm gonna ask if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to answer those. So let's go.
Let's get going.
All right, the first one would be the environment. So environment.
I'll do the environment screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we've seen is the environment plays a massive role in the success of the technology. Again, running the equipment such as the Mimaki, there's a lot more tolerance, so it makes it a lot easier for everybody out there. But what we've seen is, and this applies to all different types of equipment, whether it's eco-solvent or DTG or whatever the case is, environment plays a huge focus. So yeah, one of the leading causes of equipment issues stems from not maintaining the proper environmental conditions. By striving to adhere as closely as possible to the parameters outlined below, you can ensure your equipment stays in an optimal condition and perform at its best.
So the first thing, very importantly, is the humidity, which should be between 45 to 60%. Especially in our weather, we're in the extremes, extreme hot, extreme cold. So that is very imperative to keep the humidity in place. So A few of the measures you could keep that in place is use ultrasonic humidifiers, dry humidifiers, avoid wet humidification systems as they can cause rust and electrical failures. Position the humidifier away from the back of the printer. Because you don't want your coating on the film going bad with the excess humidity. For convenience, consider adding a humidification system to your HVAC to eliminate the need for a standalone unit. That's another way of doing it. Mostly people in commercial units can do that very easily. Also, air conditioning in summer. While air conditioning helps with temperature control, it lowers humidity, so use humidifiers in tandem. Ensure AC vents are directed away from the shaker and the back of the printer. Shaker, because you want certain temperature to cure the DTF transistors. You don't want to raise the temperature too high due to the air conditioning, and that'll spoil your prints. Avoid direct airflow towards printers. Never direct blowing air toward the printers to prevent dust, debris, or temperature variations from impacting performance.
And we really want to emphasize the fact that you want to use a dry humidification system. We've had, in some instances, they are a little bit more expensive. They require a little bit more maintenance. You're going to have to put filters in them. But we've seen situations where customers have completely rusted out their equipment. Like I'm talking 3 to 6 months. They're buying a cheaper humidification system and it completely fails. The machine almost becomes a scrap. So it's super, super important. And as you mentioned, you never want it blowing directly into the machine. So we've had some customers in the beginning that had a system that was blowing straight into the heads, and literally within a month of them running, they had to replace all the 4 heads, and then they did it again. And we'd advise them, hey, listen, we're pretty confident that the issue is that you're blowing air directly into the machine. And lo and behold, once they pulled that out, then the issues had kind of subsided. And they were up and running properly again. So super important. And it is a challenge for us. I mean, in Canada, you're going to get those summer is completely different than winter, right? So you have to take the time and energy to make sure that you're trying to maintain that environment as close as possible to the parameters that are requested.
Okay, so the temperature should be between 24 and 28 degrees Celsius. A lot of DTF companies say that it should be between 20 and 30. With our experience, the ideal is between 24 and 28. So air conditioners are...
Go ahead.
Just to clarify, you're referring to Chinese machines, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, the tolerance for Mimaki is a lot higher, right? Again, you want to keep in the ideal range. Now, I believe at 35 degrees Celsius, it won't even allow you to print.
Yeah, there are sensors in all of these machines. If your environment is too cold, you'll get a warning. For example, we've been into shops where somebody's got a bay door and no heat, and the printer's sitting there and it's minus 30 outside. And the printer's just like, I can't function under these conditions. And it's the same. It's the same with the heat too. If it's too hot, there's certain elements of the device that's going to shut itself down for safety reasons and not allow it to function. So the environment is critical, no matter what the manufacturer is, or no matter what the print technology is. And really, people should be talking to you about this when you're looking at new technologies. Make sure that you have this discussion.
Yeah, and we've only seen it in a couple instances where the machine literally kicked out and it wouldn't allow you to print. And we spoke to Mimaki. We say, hey, listen, why is it not allowing people to print over 35 degrees Celsius? Which is ridiculous. I mean, to be in an environment that's 37 or 38, it's very difficult, and I don't even know legal to have people working in those conditions. So basically, what happens is the viscosity of the ink will change based on the temperature, and the machine, the Mimaki, is protecting you from damaging the print heads, right? Whereas the other technologies that are running the i3200, you don't have that type of protection. So if it's really hot one day, you're just going to print, you're going to blow your heads, right? Whereas the Mimaki has those built-in features to make sure that, hey, you don't do that. You don't push the envelope and damage your equipment. So.
Okay, so air conditioners...
Sorry, guys, got a question?
So, for example, actually, my shop is not 45 degrees. So, it was, let's say, 24, 25, maybe the printer is hotter than the actual temperature of the shop. And how do you gauge that?
So the question, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question she was saying is the The area around the printer is 25 degrees, is that what you're saying?
exceed the thermostat saying 25 degrees.
Okay,
Now, when printers coming up and getting too hot, it needs to cool down when it's time. So once the hitting saying it's 35 degrees, and it's not really 35 degrees in your shop.
okay. Any idea of that, Lucas or Stephen?
So as far as I understand, the printhead with electricity going through the printhead, it does heat up a little bit more than what the environment is. So even if the environment is around 23, 24 as an example, but the printhead actually heats up a little bit more, and it says 28, 29, that's when you get those warnings. Usually around 24 it shouldn't happen, but if the environment's really small and you have a shaker very close to the printer, and you don't have a way to extract the hot air, then that actually goes towards that machine and causes that issue. Now I know in the Mimaki they do have a feature in the menu where you can actually turn on the top blower, and what it does, it'll help exhaust some of that hot air out. This is usually off by default, but you can turn it on, and there is a low and standard setting, so you can just turn it on to standard. You should be able to see that in the machine setup around there. That's pretty much there to help alleviate that heat.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
That would be bad. You want to repeat the question?
Yeah, he's asking if there's a way to bypass the ability for it to operate above, 30, 31 or 32 degrees. Is that do you know what the exact temperature is? Or?
I can find out.
Okay.
I'm going to grab one of my tech guys to join as well. But yeah, that's a safety feature. Like it's built in there because to Zach's point earlier, in fact, some of our UV machines, like our roll-to-roll print cut UV machines, they actually have heaters to warm the ink to create the correct viscosity for printing. It's very low voltage and low heat, but under higher heat, you're going to change the viscosity of the ink and you're going to create problems for yourself. I'll check the specs on ours, but I thought the operating environment was between like a maximum of 25 degrees Celsius and relative humidity of I think 45 to 55. Let me confirm that, but you should really be in an office type environment where
Shall I just
the
keep reading
temperature
this?
and humidity is
Shall I just keep reading
I
this?
mean, we've seen these things in barns, not a really good place to be running a business, but folks use the space they have, but you really want to be within those specifications. I'll get the exact numbers for us for later on.
Just throwing this out, would it then not be, why don't I condition the entire room but build something over the printer that then just maintain the temperature of the printer?
So that's one of the things that we're going to talk about later is, we have a lot of people that are putting these in screen print shops. And what a lot of them have done successfully is they've put, for example, like an outdoor tent, the event tents, right? The 10 by 12 outdoor tent with some flaps in there. So you're not having to control your entire environment. Those are something you could buy on Amazon for maybe, $300 or whatnot. But something like that makes it a lot easier to control the environment that the machine is in. Yeah.
More questions? So the second point, temperature should be between 24 and 28 degrees Celsius. That helps the printhead to throw out the ink through the nozzles very perfectly. So air conditioners are essential for summer, but should be used alongside humidifiers to maintain proper humidity levels. In winters, heaters are necessary, and you may need dehumidifiers to prevent excessive humidity. Clean environment. Maintain a dust-free environment. If your workspace is particularly dusty, consider installing an air purification system. Excess airborne dust can damage printheads, making it essential to keep the environment well controlled. External doors. Avoid leaving doors open to the outside, as this can introduce uncontrollable changes to the environment you're working hard to maintain. Keeping doors closed helps preserve consistent temperature, humidity, and air quality.
And again, some of the environments where you see challenges, for example, are like screen print shops, right? High volume, lots of lint flying in the air. That's where you need to start having, really big diligence. Like for example, Abbott Apparel here, they've enclosed the machine in its own little room, separate from the entire screen print operation, right? They try and isolate it. So yeah, if you have the opportunity to build out a solution, that's great. If not, then looking at that 10 system makes it a lot easier as well. Yep, Kevin?
Yeah, you talked about the environment and the machinery. Can you also comment on the environment effects both on the film and powder as well?
Yeah, so those are things that we're going to be covering in the slide as well. Talk about the external doors.
If you want to, there's the specs, humidity and temperature. If you want to get so 20 to 30 degrees.
Yeah, so that's the range. So it's 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. That's where the Mimaki wants it to be operating within. Okay. Yep.
Whenever my machine is overheating or going to 30 degrees, it takes a very long time. If you just stop everything and just leave it on, it takes a very long time for it to actually go down below 32. That solution I found was just turning off the oven and letting the oven cool down. Would that have any problems, like, or if I just keep doing that? Because it shuts it down and then everything cools down within 5 to 10 minutes and I can keep pressing again.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, sorry, can you just repeat that one more time?
Whenever I want the degrees to go down so I can keep my job going in a faster time, I just emergency stop the oven or just turn it off, and then the oven will cool down faster, which means the whole machine cools down faster, so I can continue the job faster. I'm just wondering if that's like I should be doing.
So if the environment keeps on getting too hot, then you would have to change something to help that out, because you don't want the printer to continuously going exceeding its own temperature. So because of the shaker having that, it would be a good idea to exhaust and vent the heat of that shaker out. So usually you have the fume extractor, depending on which one you have, the shaker and fume extractor, like that one over there. When you have it connected, you can actually take the outlet of the heat and just put it out or vent it out anywhere, even out of the room completely, right? So you could do something like that. You just don't want to make sure that it keeps on doing that, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically what you're doing by turning off the shakers, you're dropping the ambient temperature around the printer, right? So, I mean, theoretically, if you're dropping the temperature and the machine starts working again, it's a range that it can be able to. So that temperature's already dropped. So, yeah, I guess it's a quick hack just to get the temperature down quick.
Yep.
Just talk about the doors.
Nice.
Just talk about the doors, ready?
I already said it.
Okay.
The additional issues that can arise from an improper environment is banding, irregular print quality due to the fluctuating environmental factors.
And we're going to go over that specifically of what the banding looks like. Now, this is probably the biggest challenge that plagues the Chinese machines is banding. That's one thing that the Mimaki has changed because they have that independent nozzle dropout technology. As it's printing, if a nozzle drops out, it rotates it, it does a cleaning, and then it continues. And that's why we said with the Chinese, you really, really need to be dialed in because, and you can't really leave it unattended. The challenges with the Chinese machines, if you don't have everything perfect, you'll send your job to print for 2-3 hours, you'll come back and you're like, oh man, I just, have an hour of prints with banding on it. So again, it's that tolerance that Mimaki technology allows you to be a little bit more forgiving, which is why we're more comfortable saying with these machines, you can leave them unattended, right?
Oil halo around prints, visible halos caused by environmental humidity or temperature, and this is applicable on both Chinese and Mimaki printers. Clogged printheads, dust, humidity, or temperature variations can cause blockages. Disproportionate coating on film, uneven application of coatings due to inconsistent environmental conditions, excess powder on film, excessive powder clings to unused areas impacting print quality, prints under or overcooked, inconsistent curing caused by temperature imbalances, diminished print vibrancy, poor environment can result in colors appearing dull or washed out. So the question you had, if you're not within the range of the temperature, your print quality is gonna, deteriorate pretty much.
Okay. Yeah, and again, some of these we're going to have pictures later on and go into a little bit more depth and detail on how to resolve them and what to look out for.
So the best way is build your own environment. For those who can install equipment in a controlled office space, one simple and effective solution is to enclose the machine in an outdoor gazebo tent with sidewalls. This helps protect the equipment from environmental factors such as dust, temperature fluctuations, and humidity changes, providing a more stable working environment. Any questions?
You have all 40, you say you have 40 printers,
Yes, sir.
and everyone has a shipper on it?
Sorry?
Yeah.
Are they all in one room?
They're all in one building, yes.
Wow, so you must have quite a system then
Yes.
for keeping all that.
Yeah, so we have to keep the whole building controlled.
Great.
Yeah. So
Banding. So again, this is what we're touching on. This is one of the biggest challenges that we see with the Chinese printers, the Epson i3200 print heads. So visible banding, which is characterized by horizontal lines throughout your prints, is typically caused by nozzle dropout. While this is a common issue with printers that use the Epson i3200 print heads, Mimaki's independent nozzle dropout technology helps mitigate this problem, making banding less of a concern for their printers. And as David had mentioned previously, the Mimaki has the ability, the Epson i3200 print head, if you get nozzles that are permanently damaged, you're not going to be able to get those back, right? Whereas Mimaki has that ability in the feature where if you do have some damaged nozzles, and I believe he said it was 10 nozzles per line, right? Yeah, per channel, 10 nozzles per channel. So you have the ability to, if you actually ever permanently lose a channel, to be able to replace that with a good nozzle. Okay.
Just to clarify, Mimaki makes their own printhead, right? They don't use Epson, another version of an Epson printhead or anything?
So it's an Epson DX7 printhead, correct? But it is modified, so it's not the standard printhead that's, you could probably talk about more. That's a technical question.
Yeah, so they pretty much designed it for their own sake, to improve the design of
Put it closer to your
the
mouth.
printhead itself.
even the Epson
so
i3200s we use on Chinese machines, they're not the regular
If
i3200.
you buy a real Epson printer, you're getting a different printhead than an
Yeah, it's not the same.
Not only that, sometimes what you'll see is the actual electronics and the way we fire the bezels in the printhead is proprietary to Mimaki, even though it might be someone else's head. So when you're shopping for printheads, we're shopping, it's got a Ricoh Gen 5. Well, yeah, Mike, but the way we fire that head can be completely different than the way Ricoh does it. So, yeah.
And these printheads are very robust. I mean, one of the challenges with the i3200 printhead, which we've had some customers have experienced, they have poor film alignment, it gets cut up, it smashes the bottom of the heads, and they're pretty much shot. We've seen that with the Mimaki, although it's a lot less common because of the feeding system that they have. The head is a lot more robust. It can take a little bit more of a beating. So it's not as critical, although you want to avoid as much as possible. The head is a lot more tolerant to getting hit by the film.
Okay, we're talking about reasons behind banding is poor nozzle check. Several factors can contribute to a poor nozzle check, including damaged wipers. Worn out or broken wipers can prevent proper cleaning of the printheads.
You got a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, assuming a 40-hour work week, how long is the life expectancy for printhead on the
I've had it for 2 years. And the amount of volume we print them, we use a printer 9 hours a day. So it
Are you talking about the Mimaki right now?
Yeah, the Mimaki printhead.
Oh, Lucas, you could speak. He was talking about the Epson i3200.
Yeah, I mean, I can make a comment. I mean, essentially, the business model is a little bit different with Mimaki than it is with some of the other competitors. There's companies out there that have kind of used their home office model, and where the printhead is consumable, and it's just something that you replace on your own. We, as an engineering company, we build the printhead to last the life of the printer. That's the expectation. Of course, there's always a possibility that you may get a head strike or you may get something like that, but generally speaking, we expect the printhead to last the life of the printer. There's also another safety feature called the media jam sensor. You'll find it on the right-hand side of all the head carriages. And it's essentially like, how do I describe it? It's like it's on a hinge and it can move in either directions, and it sits a couple of millimeters just below the printhead as well. So the idea is if that makes contact with anything, it's supposed to shut the head carriage motor down to prevent further damage, right? So whereas in some other technologies, what you'll get is a scan motor error. So the scan motor is actually the motor that drives the printhead mechanism back and forth. What'll happen is that'll get an overcurrent error because it'll run into something and then it'll
Elaborate on some of the
shut down.
questions
It's a
you
little
have
bit
there.
better of
You know what I mean?
a solution in my
Could be
opinion. It's not
interesting.
perfect. There's no guarantee that you're not going to get a head strike, and that's just part of the nature of the beast. But you know, when you go around and you look at these machines and you tap on them, you're going to hear a lot of metal. You know, you're going to see that these are meant to be industrial. We expect them to last. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and again, a lot of this comes down to you know, how you're taking care of the machine, how much you're using it. I mean, when the Chinese machines were first being sold, we had no idea. I mean, the manufacturer would say, hey, you know, 12 months is an estimate of how long the heads will last, right? And we see a variance. I mean, there are some customers within, you know, 6 to 9 months they're having to replace their heads. And there's some customers who, like for example, Meat, he's getting 2 years out of his heads. So a lot of it is going to come down to how well you take care of your machine. And again, that applies towards any technology, right? I mean, if you're in screen printing, you're not lubricating your press, then you're going to have more issues, right? So it all comes down to how diligent you guys are in taking care of the equipment and keeping it up and running.
Okay. So damaged printhead cap. A damaged cap may fail to seal properly, leading to ink drying in the nozzles. That can lead to clogging in the printheads too. Not wet capping heads. Failing to wet cap your printheads at the end of each print day can lead to clogging and poor performance. Clogged disc filters. If the disc filters are clogged, they can restrict ink flow and affect nozzle performance. Main ink tanks caps too tight. Over tightening the caps on the main ink tank can restrict ink flow and cause nozzle issues.
So again, that's going to apply to, you know, not aluminum degas bags like the Mimaki. That's going to apply to machines where you're pouring the ink in, right? You don't want to have that cap on there too tight. You need to get a little bit of airflow going through it. So that's.
Clogged head filter caps. Blocked head filter caps can hinder ink delivery to the printheads. Poor environment, again. Environmental factors such as humidity or temperature fluctuations can negatively impact nozzle performance. Closed ink valves. If the ink valves are closed, the ink supply to the printheads can be interrupted. Damaged waste ink pump. A malfunctioning waste ink pump can cause ink buildup and clogging in the system.
Does anybody have any questions around banding? Anyone that's running the Chinese machines and trying to figure out how to get that sorted?
What was that, on the last page, what was that filter you were talking about? The disc filter?
That's
Yeah, so some, depending on the ink set, I mean, some of the ink sets, you know, they have a lot more, like the titanium dioxide's not really blending in as well, or the pigments are too big. So that's the challenges with some of the cheaper inks. I mean, we'd have customers that, you know, bought machines from other suppliers, and they just were constantly replacing heads, and they, you know, they came to us and they said, hey, like, how can we get that fixed? And literally it was just a matter of swapping out the ink, right? I mean, even with us, you've seen that we've gone through, I believe, 2 different ink sets, potentially 3 over the years, right? We're just constantly testing and trying to find better and better ink out there. So the quality of ink that you put in there is very important. So some of the, you know, the inferior inks, they're putting, you know, disc filters on them to basically, as it's passing through the filter, if there's any heavy contaminants in there, it'll actually prevent it from getting to the printhead.
So poor nozzle check solutions. If you're missing a large chunk from the test print, follow these steps. Inspect the wiper and printhead cap. Check for any damage to these parts as they are crucial for proper cleaning and ink flow. Check the dampers. If the wiper and cap are in good condition, inspect the dampers to ensure they are filled with ink. If they're not, carefully remove the damper and use a syringe to eliminate any air pockets. Run an ink load. Perform an ink load for 10-20 seconds to help prime the system. Run a strong clean. After the ink load, run a strong clean cycle to clear any remaining blockages. Wet cap the printheads. Be sure to wet cap the printheads at the end of the day to prevent ink from drying out and causing nozzle issues. We figured out another way of unclogging the blocked nozzles on a printhead. We use the ZEP ammonia-free glass cleaner. We dip the head in for about 15-20 minutes at the beginning of the day. And we usually don't see any blocked nozzles for the rest of the day. So that's our morning prep. We do it for about 20 minutes, and it's good to go for the rest of the day.
And while we were preparing the presentation, that's one thing that he had mentioned, and I had never heard of anybody using that before. So we personally haven't tested it. I mean, he's been doing that now for years on his Epson i3200 printhead. Definitely don't put that on the Mimaki printhead. we're not recommending ZEP floor cleaner, but you know, it seems like that's a system that he's done, and you guys do that every single morning, right?
Every single morning, on every printer.
So they basically come in and they have it sitting there. Now you can't leave them there too long or else it'll deteriorate.
Yeah, just about 20 minutes. Additional methods that can help improve your poor nozzle check. Wet cap the printheads before starting your day. Like I said, wet cap the printheads for 30 minutes using ZEP ammonia-free, stick-free glass cleaner. This helps soften any dried ink and prepares the head for optimal performance. Clean the printheads after the wet capping. Use soft foam swabs to gently clean the printheads, focusing on the base of the printhead where dried ink may accumulate around the nozzles. You can dip the swabs in the same ZEP cleaner used for wet capping to assist in removing any ink buildup.
Any questions around that at all? So that's a picture from one of the, I know a customer that wasn't doing the proper maintenance. So you're just letting that build up and build up and build up, and eventually you're gonna start having issues. So you need to take the time to make sure that you're cleaning the bottoms of the heads properly.
Clean the printhead cleaning wipers. This one you see. After this, perform an ink load into the printheads and run 2-3 strong printhead cleaning cycles. This should prepare the printer for the day as long as the environmental conditions are properly maintained. If you notice poor nozzle checks during the day, perform printhead cleans, starting with soft cleans followed by strong cleans to resolve the issue. In last resort situations, you can wet cap the printheads for 10-15 minutes using a clog buster liquid. However, avoid leaving the heads capped for too long, as extended exposure can cause the printhead to deteriorate. After wet capping, perform an ink load and run strong printhead cleans to clear any remaining blockages.
So we sell a product called Clog Buster. It's a small bottle. It's blue solution. It's really meant to be used as like the last resort. Like you're trying to use the regular cleaning solution and you just can't seem to get it, going back. Again, this is for the i3200 printheads. Now that solution is very strong. So we've had some customers leave it there for an hour, 2 hours. They're not following the instructions and literally just deteriorate the entire head. So it's really, if you're at the point where like, man, I just can't get this running, my head's gonna go to the trash if I can't fix it. It's something that you can try to see if you can revive the head.
The CP pad, ink buildup under the carriage. If you notice ink buildup under the carriage, check the CP pads. If they're saturated with ink, flip them over or replace them as needed to ensure proper ink absorption and avoid further issues.
Any questions about anything that we were going over? Yep, go ahead.
What does your fleet look like? The machine that you have like 15 Chinese and 3 Mimaki.
We don't have any Mimaki for now.
So he's been running all Chinese. And again, we have customers that have been running Chinese machines and they're successful. When we look at the failure rate, I mean, for example, we have a client called Sean from Printheads, and super dialed in shop. We were hoping he was going to be here today, but he's just so busy with his POD business. And he's done everything from embroidery to screen to running eco-solvent. So I would say he's a very experienced shop. And he brought in 2 of the Chinese machines that he imported himself, and they didn't even last 6 months. He was constantly changing heads, and it got to the point where he said, you know what, this is just not working for me. He chucked them, and he was running the Brother technologies. Typical using your DTG machine to print, hand apply the powder, and run it through the dryer. And he was basically waiting for more industrial, refined solution, and he got his first Mimaki DTF in January of this year. About 2 months later, he purchased 2 more. Again, 3 or 4 months later, purchased 2 more. And to get through the Christmas season, he's now at 7 machines, and he's running those things 2 shifts nonstop. Never had to do a head replacement, and he's really, really, pushing those machines to its limits. So, yeah, I mean, again, if someone like me, he's got people on staff that are constantly taking care of the machines. They have rigid maintenance. They're walking around taking care of things at all times, right? So if you're a shop that's built to do something like that, where his bread and butter has been DTF, and you could allocate the resources to do that, you can be successful with the Chinese machines. But realistically speaking, the average shop, they're doing so many things. I mean, you guys are business owners, chasing your tails, putting out fires all day long. It's really hard to be 100% dedicated to maintaining a machine to its, that has zero tolerance, right, to be able to function properly. So we'll see if he gets a Mimaki in there one day, but as of right now, he's been running his machines. Okay, so printhead crashes. Yep.
Right, so when you're opening the CT pads, you see all that ink build up at the bottom there. I would clean that all up. Since you have access to it, I wouldn't leave it the way it is. If it's there, clean anything that you see. Going back to the cleaning cycles, most of what was talked about was about the Chinese printers. The Mimaki does clean itself throughout the day. Usually in the morning you come in, if you do a test print, you're at 100% nozzles. So there's not too much involved. As long as you take care of the machine and do your replacements for the parts, the wipers, the cap tops, the machine pretty much takes care of it for you.
So all that ink underneath that you can see there, that's not.
I would wipe it down. Just use a shop towel, clean it all there, right? And then for the Mimaki, you don't want to touch the print heads directly cleaning it, just clean around the carriage. If you do see some ink build up around the perimeter of the print head, just take it out with the cotton swab. Just make sure to dip it in the cleaning solution. And that's about it.
Not apply upwards pressure. Yeah. Which is what David was saying. Just kind of graze over the top, do more passes instead of doing less passes with upward pressure, because that'll damage the print head. Okay, so print head crashes. That's everybody's fear. That's what everyone's trying to avoid. It's probably the most lethal thing that could happen to any print head, right? So we want to talk about how to avoid that. So printhead crashes, as mentioned, are among the most damaging and costly issues that can occur with your printers. They can lead to severe damage to the printheads, requiring expensive repairs or replacements. Preventing crashes through careful handling and maintenance is crucial to protecting your investment.
Plan of action after having a head crash. I know it's a very unfortunate scenario. But stop printing immediately as soon as head crash occurs. Cease printing right away to prevent further damage. Move media away. Carefully move any media away from the printheads to avoid additional strain or damage. Clean immediately. Perform a cleaning cycle to clear any ink or debris that may have accumulated around the printheads. Move the carriage to the left. Bring the carriage to the left side and clean underneath it to ensure no ink or debris is obstructing the movement. Perform a nozzle test. Run a nozzle test print to check for any missing nozzles. If any are missing, perform another cleaning cycle. If regular cleaning doesn't resolve the issue, perform nozzle washes, soak the heads for 30 minutes, and then run another cleaning cycle followed by a nozzle test print.
So this is where we see, and this applies to DTG as well. You'd be printing, you don't have your t-shirt perfectly flat, and then it would, scrape the t-shirt. You get pre-treatment in there, and shops would just normally, stop it, pull it out, and start printing again. It's really important that when that happens, that you spend the time to make sure that you clean the head properly and get it back to its position. Don't just ignore it. I know you guys are busy and you want to just keep printing, but you really need to follow the steps properly to make sure that you're taking care of the head.
Inspect for causes. Investigate the reason for the head crash. Was the film loaded correctly? Is the film straight and not shifting during printing? Inspect pinch rollers. Check the pinch rollers to ensure they're clean and functioning properly. Do not use aggressive cleaners like alcohol, WD-40, or harsh cleaning solutions. Instead, use hot water and a microfiber cloth to gently clean the rollers. How to avoid printhead crashes. Ensure proper feed roll alignment. The feed roll must be perfectly aligned with the printer's feed system to ensure smooth media movement and avoid any misalignment that could cause a crash. Align the shaker with the printer feed. The shaker should also be aligned in a straight line with the printer's feed to prevent the film roll from rising and hitting the printheads. Use media guides effectively. Make sure the roll is fed through the media guides in a perfectly straight line, maintaining consistency throughout the printing process. Mark the printer for alignment. We recommend drawing a line on the printer to align the right side of the film roll. This ensures that the film sits in the same position every time, providing consistency and preventing misalignment.
So that was a good tip that, again, we found out that Amit was using. So basically, once you know that you have it perfectly aligned, he literally draws a line down so that you could make sure that your film is following that perfectly,
You
right?
can use a Sharpie to draw a line.
Yeah, literally a Sharpie on there, because once that's how you're gonna know, hey, it's gonna go down there every single time. And quickly, when you load a new roll, you could see that if it's off at all, right? Again, you need to make sure that the printer's not being moved in one direction or the shaker's not being moved. So if you're cleaning around it and you're moving the equipment, then you need to make sure everything's perfectly lined up again. Of course, yep.
Thank you. That is a great tip, and I just want to add to that. If you look at the platens on a lot of our machines, they'll actually have a straight edge right there. When you are loading your media, no matter what kind of printer you're using, you have to keep in mind that your leading edge is not necessarily square, right? Only the edges where they cut the roll are actually true. So when you load it up, if you have that edge true, you know, before you actually start printing, just
Is there anything that you want to add to any of these?
watch and see if that roll is wandering to the left or to the right. If it's wandering to the left or the right, you didn't set it correctly.
If there's anything that's Mimaki
Back
related,
in,
let me know.
raise your loading lever. Pull from the center of the roll. Some of our printers actually have a function called P-cut, where actually it will cut the roll, the front of the roll to a taper down at the front to go on the take-up unit, so you can't mess that up. But not all machines have that function, so it's really, really important to do that. If you feed 2 or 3 feet and it's feeding really, really well, you'll be able to print that whole roll without worrying about it. And also another thing to note on that is a lot of the machines have the ability for you to tell the machine how long the roll is. So you put a 150-foot roll on, tell it you put 150 feet on there, and it won't overprint.
Is that working with the Mac?
A 10-foot job with only 5 feet of media, it won't let you do it. Okay, so those are some really.
And that's a feature that's on the TXF.
I believe it's on the TXF. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's on the TXF as well. It's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Thanks. Great tip.
Mimaki technology advantage. Mimaki printers experience fewer alignment issues compared to others, especially since they don't require attention bar system. To load film correctly, feed the film through the pinch rollers, pull from the center of the film until you feel resistance. Once the resistance is felt, drop the pinch rollers to secure the film.
Do you want to talk on that at all? Yeah. Okay.
Use high quality film. Using a high quality double coated matte PET film ensures that the film does not lift during printing, which can prevent it from hitting the printheads.
So that's something that we learned early on. You know, some of the earlier, as mentioned, like the film technology, ink technology, equipment technology is constantly evolving. So some of you guys who've been with us since the beginning, there was a period of time where there was a generation of film that we had that was actually building up a lot of static. It didn't have enough matte on there, and it would actually get caught as we were printing. And we're all trying to figure out different hacks and ways to do it, and we're all calling each other. You know, customers are panicking, and we had to come up with some crazy solutions. Some of you guys are laughing because we all went through this together, but you know, running tape down to try and give it like so that it wouldn't really grab onto the feeding system in the front, right? So that's why it is really, really important to make sure that you're using a film. And listen, even quality films, I mean, these films aren't perfect, right? Again, this is technology, it's in its infancy, and you know, sometimes you might get something that's a little bit more coated than others, and you'll see that the film might perform slightly different. So, yep.
So RVA sells their own film.
Correct.
Brand,
Yep.
and Mimaki sells film as well.
No.
Mimaki does not sell film.
No. No.
So,
No.
I'm very ready.
Yeah, and that's why every single film that we bring in, I mean, if I go to my office right now, I probably have 4 or 5 different films that are in there that are samples, and we test and we test and we test. And once we find one that we think performs slightly well, then we go through a massive profiling exercise. And Steven's the one that generally does that. And he could be looking at 2 to 3 days to do a profile for one type of machine, for one type of resolution. So it's a long process, right? And that's what helps dial in the colors, which Mel will touch on later on with CAD-Link. We use CAD-Link to do all of our profiles.
You guys use a spectral
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah. I mean, he's going to be talking later on about a NIC system, which is a technology that we're using to hit specific colors. But what's the system that we use?
The I1 Pro.
Yeah, I1 Pro. We've had some shops ask, like, hey, should I buy one of those? But I think they're like almost 10 grand. For 4,500 US or something like that.
If I buy your film, I can use the profile.
Yeah, exactly. We give the profiles, and that's why sometimes customers will try another film and they're like, oh, all the colors are off. Well, every single film is going to perform differently, and every single resolution that you print at is going to print differently on every single printer. And even one Chinese Epson i3200 printhead to another, even though it's the same printhead on a different machine, it might function differently, right? Either it's the speed or whatever the software is running it, how much ink it's laying down. So there's so many variables that come into color. And color is something that's challenging not only for DTF, but for everyone, screen printing. And one thing that I learned in DTG when I ran my business, when you're doing digital, it's really hard to guarantee that you're going to hit colors because there's so many variables that come into play. How much ink did you lay down? What's the color of the T-shirt? How long did you press it? Is there dye migration? There's all these things that could cause shift. Even color of the type of lighting you're under. So if you're under fluorescent as opposed to daylight, if you actually take the Pantone book and you walk into different areas of light, depending on the colors, you actually see them completely shift, right? And on top of that, Pantone changes the colors they release a new book every year. And if you compare one book to last year or the year before, and we dealt with this at Abbott Apparel once, they had bought a new ink mixing system, and they weren't hitting certain colors, and we realized that the production area had different lighting than the graphics teams, right? So the graphics team wants to hit a certain color, and then when they go to the hit in the production, they just weren't hitting it, right? And that was a big learning experience with us with Pantone.
And Pantone books expire too.
Exactly, yeah. So that was my next point. I mean, you're supposed to date them, 12 to 18 months. And I go to some shops and they've been running the same, Pantone book for, 5, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, and these things are completely falling apart. Yep.
So under CMYK, if I understand correctly, you only hit around 1,200 colors, right?
Sorry?
You only hit about 1,200 colors of the
I don't know the exact number, but I believe the Pantone book itself is comprised of 9 different colors, right? So when you're trying to hit, every color in the Pantone book just with CMYK, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, if you go up to the 8 color system, the 9 color
Well,
system,
yeah, so
4,800 or something.
did you want to just repeat the question for folks?
Yeah, he was asking if, how many colors can you hit with the CMYK? He was asking if it's 1,200.
I can comment a little bit. We do have some guys here that are much more experienced in color management than I am, and it is a bit of a rabbit hole. But the first comment that I would make is that because we provide color profiles as well for all the machines that we make. But the first thing that I think you need to understand is that print profiles are device and environment specific. Okay, so we give them to you as a starting point within which to work, and for most people, it's fine. I mean, most people aren't trying to do, Scotia orange or TD green or whatever. So they're just happy with a good red, for example. In terms of the color spectrum, our CMYK eco-solvent machines can do about 95% of the Pantone library you can achieve with just CMYK. Okay, so when you add light cyan and you add light magenta, you're not actually expanding your color gamut, but what you're doing is you're having a positive impact on things like skin tone and grayscale if you add light black. Now, if you add orange, now you're expanding your color gamut a little bit. So it really depends. I mean, if you're not, embroiled in doing corporate work all the time, it's probably not going to be critical for you. We are talking quite a bit of conversations about color lately. We have done some color management training classes here, and we're thinking it's probably about time that we do another one. So kind of keep an eye on our website for that. But we do recommend that you learn how to make profiles. It's not that difficult to do. It's a bit time consuming, but we do recommend that it's something you learn how to do. And even a color profile can shift throughout the year as humidity and environment changes, right? So a profile that works really, really well in spring, you may see a shift in the winter months when there's more humidity in the air. So if you're really color critical, it's definitely a skill that you need to learn. There's quite a bit of learning involved. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, and to make matters worse when it comes to Pantone, when we basically had an ink mixing system in-house, as a fully automated, ink mixing system, and we would proof against our Pantone book. And believe it or not, when we were mixing the colors, we would literally list online, we're matching to the 2023 Pantone book. And there were instances that we actually found that we would go to the Pantone books and open up a set of the Pantone books that were all from the exact same batch. And I actually posted a picture on Instagram, two Pantone books, exact same time, and the colors were completely off. So just like you guys might have issues printing, well, so does Pantone with their machines. If something's off calibrated, then you're gonna have an issue. So we would have, and again, the year. So we would have customers who would look at their Pantone book and approve a color, with their customer, and it would say, okay, I'm gonna go with 185, and we would mix 185 and match it to that Pantone book, and we'd send it out to the customer and it doesn't match, right? So, and then everyone sees color differently. So you're working with a color standard that's constantly changing, that's potentially inconsistent, that everyone sees differently. So color is definitely a challenge. And that's why, for you to go and guarantee your customers when you're printing digitally, or even screen printing, that you're gonna hit that color every single time, it's very difficult to do that. So you wanna avoid promising that to your customers. And we've, in screen printing, as mentioned, like depending on what you're printing on, the base, like that could change the color, right? The actual color of the garment. So sometimes you'll have customers that'll, buy the same design on 4 or 5 different colors, and, from one to another it looks differently, right? So I see a lot of screen printers here nodding their head because it's something that they deal with all the time, so.
That was one reason we had this success, as we are able to offer Pantone matching.
And what does that process look like? Because you said it's not easy to...
It's not easy, no. It's not easy. So you have to basically go through your hex codes. We use RGB format when we print our artworks. So that helps a lot, even though our printers are CMYK. So I know it doesn't make sense, but it does make sense when you're trying to match colors.
Yeah, and what you said is you're constantly having to...
Yes, we're constantly having to tweak our profile based on the ink, the film, the like you said, the environment. A lot of factors drive in when you're trying to match colors.
Yeah. And he uses CAD-Link also, which is, again, they're doing 2 sessions on here. The entire point of these 2 days are not just to talk about maintenance, right? I mean, that's one portion of it, but a lot of this has to do with color, artwork manipulation, and that kind of stuff. So.
Okay, so ground your printer in high static environments. If you work in an environment with high static, grounding the printer is crucial. Use a copper wire to connect the printer's body to the ground, reducing the risk of static interference that could cause printhead crashes. This point is very important. Our weather is 100% high static, so your printer needs to be grounded for sure. This helps in 2 different things. First is you're not shorting your printhead. The second is you're not putting on excess powder on your film. So it's a weird reason that the powder sticks to the empty area of the film if you're high static on your printer.
And what strategy are you using? Because we've seen lots of different ways. I mean, are a lot of you guys grounding your printers at all? Ones that have static issues? No?
So we just put a copper wire connected to the printer body, and the other end we just nail it to the floor, and that's it.
And we've seen other people use like tinsel, for example. I don't know if you guys, it looks like literally Christmas tinsel, and they kind of wrap it around the machine. So that's another way to do it as well. But I think that's probably the easiest way to do it, is just attach it to the body and drill it into the ground.
Yeah.
Greasy prints. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this before. mostly due to undercuring. So it's something that we constantly get calls about, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to fix that.
How to fix greasy prints. Increase shaker temperature. Raise the temperature by 5 degrees at a time and check if the prints are still greasy. Repeat if needed.
And one challenge, again, and we were just talking about this with another customer, you know, everybody wants to know, like, well, what's the perfect temperature, right? And it's impossible to answer that. It's, you know, we have shops that buy 2 dryers, for example, screen print dryers, and they run different temp. I mean, every single machine in every single environment is going to be slightly different, right? And again, people are laying down different amounts of ink. So it's one of those things that you guys got to do a little R&D on your side and kind of find that sweet spot, find what works, right? And by just naturally increasing a couple degrees at a time, eventually you'll find that temperature that works for you. But again, that's also seasonal, right? So if you got a lot more humidity in the summer months, then or the winter months, then summer, right? I'm getting confused there.
Summer.
Anyways, you're gonna have to adjust your time and temps based on your humidity, right?
Yeah. So when you're increasing the shaker temperature, you need to check for any film damage, ensure if the film is in yellowing or burning, and adjust the temperature gradually if necessary. Ensure powder is moisture-free. Use desiccants to absorb moisture and store powder in a dry environment away from humidity. So the way we do it, we don't just start using the powder out of the box. We put it in a bucket bought from Canadian Tire. We dip some desiccants in it. We let it stay for at least 2 nights, and then we start using it. That ensures there's no moisture in the powder.
Yeah, and that's something else that we've recently found, right? And sometimes we only realize this, you know, everyone starts having similar issues at certain times of the year. You know, a lot of people are just naturally, at the end of the day, you're shutting off your machine and you're leaving the powder in there. So we found that actually taking the powder out and putting it in a sealed environment, like you said, with the those silica packets or whatever, that's going to pull out the moisture. We've actually now asked our suppliers, for example, when you look at when you guys buy the barrels, sorry, the powder and the drums, they now have silica packets in there, right? So make sure when you're pouring them into your machine, you're keeping your eye out for that. And again, we're just trying to keep that as humid as possible. Same thing with the rolls of film. It's something else that we've realized in certain times of year when it's very humid. If you're not going to be printing on it constantly, you might want to take that roll out, put it back into your into the sleeve, and just prevent it from picking up humidity from the environment. Yep. You want to repeat that question?
Are you asking if you can put the silica gel pack inside of the shaker?
Yeah, overnight instead of emptying it.
Yeah, so it's okay to do that. Of course, it's going to be better to put it in a contained box with no air around it. That would be the best option, but putting it inside the shaker is fine. You just have to be careful because there are different types of shaker. There are ones with mesh system where it won't break apart, but then you have ones that actually have a spiral system that actually turns and that could break them. So if you forget that you put those silica gel packs in there, those beads are gonna fly everywhere, right? So you can put the desiccant packs in like those grocery bags that have a hole, like those food bags, something like that, so then you know when you take it out before you start your jobs.
Yeah. And even in regards to prints that have already been printed, right? So some people, you know, they have a program, they like to print all the prints in advance and just kind of leave them there. Again, depending on the environment, if it's too much humidity, it could be a problem. So we've had customers that have said, hey, I figured out, you know, fix it. I just have a big Ziploc bag or whatever. I put them in there and I leave the silica packs and I can leave it on there for 6-9 months. I know customers that have had their transfers printed for years sitting on the shelf and there's no challenges with that. So, you know, sometimes people ask, like, how long is a transfer going to last? We don't really have an exact answer, but yeah, it just seems like as long as you keep it, again, in a well-controlled environment, that you'll get the, you know, good time out of it.
And if you have a print which is having that oily hand feel and you have to use it right away, you can microwave it for 20 seconds. It takes away the moisture.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So another tip. What about, like, would you be able to run that back through the dryer a second time, or could that?
Yeah,
be
you can do that too. You can run it through the dryer again for a few seconds, and then it'll be good again.
So this is in the situation that the you printed it and it's greasy off the bat, and you want to salvage that print.
If you forgot to seal it in a Ziploc and it's captured all that moisture in the air, and then you will have to use it, you you don't have the time to print it again, so you can either microwave or put it in the shaker again. So check filters, inspect and replace clogged shaker or fume extractors, filters to prevent glycol buildup, monitor humidity, control room humidity, and ensure proper ventilation to avoid greasy prints. Store film properly. At the end of the day, store your film in its original pack in a dry area to prevent moisture absorption, which can lead to moisture spots, shown in the picture. So if you run into this situation where you printed it onto the garment and you see those moisture spots, you can take it away. So the way to take it away is to press it with the t-shirt fabric, just one layer on top, and then press it for like 10 seconds, and the moisture spots will go away.
Another thing to touch on is the whole filter situation with these fume exhaust systems. Again, the industry's learning, right? And the earlier generations of fume extraction systems, they didn't have an oil release valve, right? So basically what happened is if you weren't constantly changing those filters, the oil would build up and it would destroy the machine. Whereas now, for example, if you see one of the new ones there, the larger industrial one, it's a larger charcoal and HEPA filter. We've gone, I don't think has anyone changed filters yet? No, like 6-9 months, nobody's changed a filter. And it's important that you're making sure that you're pulling out that glycol, right? Because the glycol, if you're not pulling it out, it'll land on the prints, which we've also seen. Now, some shops, again, that are larger and running multiple units, you guys have your own filtration system?
We have our own exhaust system, so we're exhausting all the fumes into the outer area. And
they basically have
we have pipes running hooked up to the shaker. We don't use fume extractors. Exactly the same point where your fume extractor is hooked up on the shaker. So we put a pipe on there. We have an inline exhaust, and then we have an exhaust at the wall, throwing out all the fumes.
And the way that they figure out the oil situation. And again, these are customers we have some customers that are trying to figure out their own systems to get it out. But if you don't actually build it with like underneath the sink, there's kind of like that trap in case you drop your engagement ring or something down there. You just release it. So basically, you put that little
we have
trap
a P-trap on every exhaust system. So at the end of the day, we just open the P-trap and take away all the oil.
So for a lot of shops, I mean, if you only got 1 or 2 printers, it's just easier to, get a fume extraction system, right? But there are some that opt from day one, like, hey, I just want to build out, a more industrial solution that you're not going to have to constantly be, replacing filters. So this is a very common issue. We've had a lot of inquiries about this. So it's the powdered halo around prints. Having a powdered halo around your prints is another challenge you may encounter. This typically occurs when excess powder sticks to areas outside the print, creating a visible ring and halo effect. So some of you guys might have experienced that before, where you have your print and you're seeing all these little fragments around it. That is another common issue.
Yes. So how to fix powder halos? Remove static. That's very common. Mostly that's the reason that the powder is sticking to the empty areas. Remove static. Excess static in the printer or shaker causes powder to cling to empty areas. Ground the shaker with a copper wire to eliminate static. Remove moisture from the powder. Moisture in the powder can cause powder halos. Ensure the powder is moisture-free before use. Mix ink properly. If ink has been sitting for a long time, the sediment can settle. Mix the ink thoroughly before you use to ensure even distribution and prevent halos.
Okay.
Questions?
No? Oh, okay. And, we have one client, for example, and it was actually Mario from Allright, and he kind of figured out a hack. So his environment, he was calculating how long it was taking for his the loop of film to go into the printer. And he realized that based on his environmental conditions, there's actually, the sensor that detects a loop? Yeah, so the sensor that detects the loop was lower, which means you would have a longer drop. And he was constantly having this haloing effect with the powder around it. And what he actually did was he lifted up the sensor and he put it on an angle so that the amount of time from when it started to print to when into the shaker was lessened. And that completely in his environment fixed it, right? So, it's something that we were trying to figure out for a while, and he was trying to figure out for a while. And again, it's not something you see everywhere, right? So it's just people trying to be creative and figure out solutions, and he got that dialed in. So if that's something else that you're experiencing a lot in your environment, then that's something that reach out to one of the techs, and we can give you some recommendations. Proper ink agitation. So as mentioned, this is super, super important. Again, all white ink, regardless of the type of ink, you need to make sure that you're agitating it properly. Proper mixing of DTF ink is crucial before use. The sediment in the ink should be thoroughly mixed to ensure the ink achieves a consistent, uniform texture, preventing uneven application issues like powdered halos. So again, and it's one thing that we'll talk about. We're now that again we're learning. We're seeing what some of these challenges are, and we're trying to find fixes to it. So rotating it back and forth is ideal, and you don't want to shake it aggressively. And we've seen, for example, with his inks. I mean, you could talk about what you were doing before and what you're doing now. We have a new machine that's coming in for the bottles to basically try and agitate.
So we used to hold the bottle like this and kind of rotate it for about 15-20 minutes, and that would do the job. But we've come up with a new solution where it's getting the same thing done on a machine, not with the hands.
Yeah.
So unagitated ink can cause several issues, including powder halo around the print head clogs, especially with white inks, white prints with less opacity. Traditionally, shaking ink aggressively and pouring it directly into the machine is not recommended. And instead, it's advised to shake the bottle, let it sit for an hour, shake again, let it sit for 30 minutes, and then pour it into the machine.
So again, when this technology first came out, that's what the manufacturers were telling us to do. Just give it a good shake and then pour it in there. But obviously, as you know, if you're shaking ink, you're creating air bubbles, right? And then if you go and pour that directly in there, then you start getting air into your lines. So then they said, okay, well, shake it up for a couple minutes, let it sit for an hour so it settles. Shake it up a second time to make sure that it's all in there. And then let it sit for another 30 minutes and then pour it in. And then from there, we realized that, slowly agitating the ink, which is one of the things that, Mimaki had mentioned with theirs, really helped us fix that issue. So, Kevin?
Yeah, so bottles, I get it, but now most of us are using cartridges. So how would you suggest, instead of just shaking the shit out of the cartridge, how do you suggest we actually agitate the ink in the cartridge?
Yeah, so it's the same as the Brother inks. Like, you're just recommended to slowly rock it back and forth, right? Lucas, I think David had mentioned how long they recommend doing that.
20 times. So I don't remember what the recommendation was.
20 times? Oh.
Yeah, so in the manual, it does state that you want to shake it back and forth 20 times. If you want to do this every 24 hours, there will be a message that is displayed on the screen. If you do forget, it will stay there until you hit OK. With the white ink, the Mimaki does have an automatic recirculation system, so you don't have to worry about what's in the lines. They will always be mixed together, but whatever's in the cartridge will have to be shaken every 24 hours.
And shake is a bad word. I don't like the word shake. Rock it back and forth. That's it.
And you don't have to do one cartridge at a time. If you have 4 or 5 packs of ink, you could hold your hand and just do them all at once, just to keep it the sediment constantly moving throughout the ink, right? So. Okay, so this is a go ahead.
Yeah. Ground your printer in high static environment. If you work in environment with high static, grounding the printer is crucial. Again, use a copper wire to connect the printer's body to ground, reducing the risk of static interference that could cause printhead crashes. For cartridge machines like Mimaki, your question, Kevin, gently rock the cartridge back and forth. We're also working on developing an ink.
Yeah, so basically we have a system there that we brought in as a prototype, which he's now been testing.
We've been using these. These are really helpful, and just let the ink sit there even for a day, and then use it right away after it. It's perfect.
And where we got the idea from was some of our newer Chinese machines. They actually have an ink rotator bottle on the back.
Yeah.
And our customers that had, let's say, one of the older machines and the newer ones, they said, hey, like the whites that are coming out of this are so much better. And we just realized, but having it on there and just rotating it constantly, which is something that we learned with the Brother machines as well back in the days. You giving it a really good mix really goes a long way. And as you mentioned with the Mimakis, you constantly have that ink recirculation system. So it's always being agitated, it's always moving around, you're not having any settle. But if you're running, for example, the Chinese machines that might not necessarily have that technology, if you are gone for, let's say, 2, 3, 4 days, the first, let's say 20 or 30 prints that you print until that ink goes through the lines are generally a lot duller, right? They are more of like a milky white instead of being super opaque.
Yeah. So we have the print crack.
Prints cracking. Okay, so print cracking is primarily caused by the type of ink being used. Certain inks may not have the right flexibility or curing properties, leading to cracking, especially when prints are stretched or exposed to stress. So using RB digital inks will largely resolve print cracking issues as they're designed to provide optimal flexibility and durability. To prevent cracks, ensure the correct amount of white ink registration is applied behind the color inks. If cracking occurs, gradually increase the white ink percentages by 5% at a time until you achieve the optimal result.
This is very important.
Yeah.
So if you're sorry for the word, but if you're cheaping out on white ink, it's gonna show it on your prints.
Yeah, and we had one of our customers actually who he was constantly struggling with this. We couldn't figure it out. He would send the design to us, we would print it, and there was no cracking. He would design it, he would print it, and he was getting cracking. The oven temps were more or less the same, and this was something that was going on for a very long period of time. And what we ended up realizing, he had sent some photos to a meet, and he was laying down very little white under base. He was trying to save the money on the white. And it just wasn't giving enough of a base for the color to adhere. So literally within the first wash, you would throw it in there and it would start to crack. So you really need to build a good base for the CMYK ink to bind and make sure that you don't have that cracking problem.
And also, if the white ink is in percentage, if you use the optimum percentage, your colors are going to be more vibrant too, even when you apply it on darker garments.
And that's another thing too. If you're starting off with a profile that we give you, for example, and then you start to deviate from it. So, you're printing certain jobs, certain colors with the original profile, and then you try and reduce the amount of white ink. Now that's going to start to shift your colors, right? It's the same thing with screen printing. If depending on the amount of white underbase that you're putting underneath, it could change the color. So it's if it's something that you want to constantly hit similar colors for customers. You want to make sure that you're not really, changing things like film, changing things like the amount of white ink you're laying, because again, everything just goes completely out of whack. Pooling of ink. Okay, so excessive pooling of ink, which can result in streaking, is another common issue. This typically happens when too much ink is applied to the print surface, leading to uneven distribution and visible streaks. Proper ink management and adjusting print settings can help avoid this problem. So we had, there was one person here, I forget exactly who was talking about that. Again, films are constantly changing. So previous generations of films, I think like 2 of them ago, we weren't able to lay down the same amount of ink. It didn't have that same ink loading layer. And then that's something that we worked with the manufacturers, and they released film that had a higher ink loading layer. So if you look at, for example, the new Onyx film, you're able to lay down a lot more ink than you were on some of the previous generations of film. So that's, it's very visible. I mean, you'll see it and it'll just literally streak right off the film.
To address excessive pooling and streaking, check white ink settings in digital factory CAD-Link. If the white ink setting is too high for the film, it can cause excessive pooling. Adjust the setting to match the film's capacity. Check heater settings. Ensure the heater settings are correct. Pre 32 degrees, print 32 degrees, post should be 42 to 45 degrees. Control humidity. High humidity can cause the film to absorb excess moisture, preventing proper ink adhesion. Maintain a controlled environment to ensure optimal ink absorption. Questions?
Transfer application issues. So this is another common issue. So transfer application issues such as peeling after heat pressing often stem from improper curing or pressing techniques.
Transfers peeling off after heat pressing can be caused by the following: under or over cured transfers. Ensure DTF transfers are properly cured with an orange peel texture on the adhesive side.
So that's become like the industry term. You want to get that like bumpy orange peel texture, right? If you're not getting that, you're most likely under curing it. So it's super critical to make sure that you're getting that texture. I mean, it's the easiest way to tell that you're curing it properly. Yep.
Are you looking for that same texture when you're adjusting on nylon?
Yes.
Yeah. Regardless, you always need to get that texture.
Improper heat pressing. Calibrate the heat press to ensure the temperature and pressure match the screen readings. Use medium to high pressure and adjust the temperature according to film and to the fabric and film type. So a lot of the times when you're using Chinese heat presses, they say they're at 300, the screen reading is 300 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit, but actually when you do the temperature check with the gun, it's usually more or less. So it should be basically saying what it should be saying what it actually is.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not just this with Chinese heat presses. I mean, we not to name them, but there's a lot of American heat presses that we've been selling for years, and we found the same thing. I mean, it's just inconsistent, right? Yep.
So let's say we're doing a high bleed polyester. What is the minimum temperature for letting it cure?
260.
260 is the lowest.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, this is another thing about dialing in your settings, right? Usually if you're dropping the temp, you're increasing the time, correct?
Usually yes, but also when you're pressing a fabric like that, you said polyester, you should use. We found our own trick. We use an embroidery backing. So the embroidery backing. So we put it on the transfer that avoids the scorch mark. In that case, you'll need to increase the temperature by 5 or 10 degrees, but then it'll totally take away the scorch marks from the fabric.
Yeah, we usually do 270. I just want to know what was the minimum. So,
Yeah, the powder settings is supposed to be, the minimum is 260.
Yeah.
You guys also sell black powder, which
Yeah. So again, it's one of those things that some people really like and some people don't do at all. The black powder is meant to help with dye migration. Now, obviously, the challenge is that you're going to have to swap out the powder every single time that you're moving to that garment. So a lot of shops don't. Some shops swear by it. Some shops don't like using it at all. So again, it's personal preference kind of thing. There's different ways around it. Like adjusting the time and temp. That's a really good tip.
My opinion, black powder doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
Keep using the white.
Yeah.
are you saying that black powder is like a dye migration blocker?
That's what it's supposed to do. Yeah. And again, I have some customers that they buy. They print for a lot of athletics and they use a lot of black powder. What we've seen is that it'll slightly. Do you use the black powder? Yeah. And do you find that it slightly mutes the print at all, or is it pretty much the same? Yeah. Yeah. So some people said it's not. You're not getting the same white opacity, obviously, because there's a black underbase, but
Yes,
we
Kevin.
sell it. Kevin.
Yeah, can you comment on the fact that there's two sizes of powder?
Yes.
That I know we have to sell a medium powder and a fine powder.
Yeah.
And I can't really determine why one is used over the other.
So I'll talk on my experience, and yours might be different. We generally recommend for shops to use the fine powder if they're printing on the DTG machines. So if you're putting down the transfer, you're printing it, you're applying the powder by hand, and then you're putting it in the dryer. That's usually what's recommended because you're not going to have those big chunks. It's a lot easier to fall off if it's a fine powder. With the Chinese machines, or the roll-to-roll, sorry, we generally recommend a medium powder, right? But I have some shops that swear that they only want to run the fine powder, or I have some shops that will buy fine powder and medium powder, and then they mix it 50-50. So again, it's one of those things that every shop kind of has its own way of doing things. What do you guys use as medium?
We use medium. Fine powder, we used to use fine powder in the early days, but fine powder has two issues. First is the application on the ink is not consistent. The second is it's very light and it goes in, it gets airborne and it affects the print head. So highly recommended is to use the medium powder.
But again, yep, go ahead.
So for a shot that is not roll to roll, for example, like Sean, you suggest to go with the fine powder because it's a lot of right end, even though it's not really on the machine?
Yeah, so that's what we've seen works best is using the fine powder when you're manually applying. Again, it's just, are there some shops that are doing DTG and using the medium powder? I'm sure there are, right? And vice versa. But the recommendation is if you're generally applying by hand to use the finer powder. It just seems like it's easier for the granulates to come off when you go and flick it off by hand, right? So.
Fine powder has an additional feature that the hand fill is a little better, but when it's not consistently applied onto the ink, it can also lead to peeling off transfers later.
I found with the fine powder as well, it fell right through the screens.
Yeah.
Shapers, constantly reloading it.
Yeah, and I think we had a finer mesh one that was supposed to help with that. I don't know if.
No, the finer mesh is for the medium powder.
Oh, the finer mesh is for the medium powder. Yeah, exactly.
So people would mix.
Yep. Go ahead. Sorry, can you just say it a little bit louder? I see. You're talking about something with like a waterproof coating. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
So we have a different DTF, which we call a DTF Cool, which is specially designed for weatherproof coated or PVC coated materials. We've been using it on a lot of StormTech products, nylon jackets kind of stuff. And the only difference in that product is the powder, actually. So the powder has much stronger adhesion, and it applies at a very lower temperature, so you're not scorching the material at the same time.
And again, using that backing trick of just having that piece of backing or I don't know,
piece of Fibroidy backing helps a lot. Use a cutaway backing you can buy from.
Yeah.
So continuing, uneven pressure or heat, work on a flat surface to ensure uniform application. Avoid pressing over seams, which can disrupt even pressure and heat distribution.
So this is another very, very common issue that we see. When all the heat presses that we sell, we have interchangeable plate-ins, right? So what some people are trying to do is they don't want to buy the youth plate-in, they don't want to buy the onesie plate-in. So they just lay the youth shirt or the onesie on top of the standard plate-in. And the problem is you have the seams that get in the way, right? And then you're not getting that consistent pressure. So you have some areas of the transfers that are getting more pressure, some areas that are getting less, and then that causes the not to get the proper adhesion.
Careful peeling, ensure the transfer has adhered evenly before peeling off the film. Secondary press, always perform a second press to enhance durability during washes and regular wear. And the second press always seals the edges. The edges is where it starts peeling. So the second press is more important than the first press.
How long?
I would say the same time you do the first press, but you can reduce it by 2, 6, or 7 seconds.
And again, every shop we go to, it's different. I mean, I'll see some shops that are doing 15 seconds, then 6 seconds, or I see some shops that are doing 12 seconds on both. Again, it's one of those trial and error things. You keep going until you figure out what works for you.
If you're using pneumatic presses, 6 and 6 is ideal. That's what we use. So 6 seconds first and 6 seconds second.
And pneumatic presses is generally what we recommend. I mean, obviously they're more expensive, and some people are cost prohibited, so they go with a standard manual press. And you really have to crank that thing to get a good amount of pressure. And
even
to do
the
that,
hand feel on pneumatic is way better than on a clamshell.
it's just hard to replicate the same amount of pressure with a manual press.
Hand feel of prints. The pressure and material used during the second press significantly influence the hand feel of DTF transfers. Pressure setting, medium to high pressure, ensures the transfers seep into the fabric for proper adhesion. Material for second press, Teflon sheet, if you want to, it creates a glossy finish with a plasticky hand feel. If you like it, keep using Teflon sheets. Craft paper leaves a slight matte finish with a less plasticky texture. T-shirt or art canvas layer produces the most matte finish and a textured hand feel resembling screen printing.
So this is something new that I actually found out in a podcast that I do, and I had a guest on, and he's in a lot of DTF shops on a regular basis. And there was one huge shop in the U.S. and when this tech was there, he just couldn't understand why they had such a nice hand feel. Whereas everyone else was kind of a bit of a glossy or really shiny, and they were using art canvas. So they literally went to, whatever, Michael's or wherever they have in the States, and they were creating these squares of canvas. And he said that they would heat press it, let's say 40, 50, 60 times, and then they would take that and then they would throw it in a bin. And, they would just keep doing that throughout the week, taking that canvas and then giving it a wash. And it would kind of be able to reuse it. Because the canvas eventually will just pick up, what is it?
The oil.
The oils off the film, right? So eventually it'll be to the point where there's no texture. So that's something that, even at Avid, I think you guys are doing that as well, right? You guys are using art canvas underneath your Stampinators. Yeah. So, and it makes a big difference. So, it's convenient to just use the Teflon because you're heat pressing it and then it lifts, and then you just peel it and you're pushing it down again. So, a way to get a better hand is to have that different canvas underneath. Yep.
So 40 to about 60.
Yeah, 40 to 60 psi.
Yes. Yes, so usually canvas tote bags are cold peel. So use a higher temperature setting, higher pressure setting, and peel cold. So that would be your pressure. So you make sure you're medium to high. And then the second press, if you use an art canvas on top or a layer of t-shirt, will ensure that it seeps into the fabric nicely.
Sorry guys, can we just repeat the question?
Yeah.
I know I didn't hear it.
She was asking, there's challenges some people have with canvas bags, and also certain materials of cotton, right?
Yeah.
There's certain cottons that you find that you can't just do an instant peel. You kind of got to let it sit for a little bit and then kind of peel it. So it is dictated by material. But she was asking art canvas specifically. I guess when you're trying to peel it, it's coming off. It's not releasing from the transfer, correct? Yeah. 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 I see. And have you tried to do using like we're mentioning a texture? Because you're saying you just don't want it to feel plasticky, right? Yeah. Have you tried using a textured, like something like a t-shirt? Yeah. What do you find with pillows?
We don't recommend pillows.
Yeah, because the problem is you're not getting the same amount of pressure. Right?
The pillows will actually add to scorching or leaving a mark of the heat press onto the fabric, to the rest of the area apart from the print, right? And also, we use white t-shirts, the heavy cotton Gildan. Those are the best, so cut them out if you have extras or buy some. And then just use one layer. That gives a very good hand feel.
So do you gotta wash the t-shirts like you do the canvas ones?
No.
We use t-shirts.
Yeah, t-shirt is fine. Yeah, we just throw it out, or you can wash it too.
Well,
I
heard you say you wash the canvas ones after a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, because basically what's going to happen is the material is going to get like matted, over time, just picking up the oils. It's going to be almost going to have a sheen to it, right? Yeah. So instead of just throwing it out, throw in the wash, get it all cleaned up, and start using it again. Yep.
So back to the question around the bags. Are you still using the same hot peel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or you just let it cool down?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. He was asking if it's the same film that you're using. So the film that we sell can be used as a hot,
Hot
a
and
cold, or a
cold.
medium peel,
Yeah,
right?
you label it hot peel. and
Yeah,
some
yeah.
People label the film as cold peel.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
mostly hot peel. Like 90% of the times it's hot peel. But when you're seeing issues like on a tote bag, rather wait, let the adhesive dry and apply to the fabric and then peel it off. So it's easier.
And the hot peel is a newer technology. I mean, when the films first came out, everything was cold peel,
It was
right?
cold peel, yes.
And obviously, for production purposes, people want to be able to just peel it right away, right? Just to increase production. It's annoying to have to, take it off the plate and stack them up, and then later on go and peel them, put them back on, and heat press it a second time. So you do want to go with a good hot peel film.
That'll be all.
Okay.
More questions?
Questions? Yep. Sorry, can you repeat that? So that's going to be Mel, CAD-Link Mel. That's one of the seminars you're going to be going over is color, how to maintain color consistency, correct? Yeah.
I'm going over it briefly. The top of it is my script. My whole time will go over color. We won't go over anything else, but I will be touching on it, and I'll answer.
Did you want to talk on? Yeah.
So how we make sure that the printers print alike, first is the roll, and then the second is using the same profile on all of them, and then also your environment. So your environment should be consistently at a setting throughout the day and throughout the year.
It's like even with the brothers, right? The brother DTG machines are in the DTG machines. If your environment's really dry, you're not laying down the same amount of ink, right? Some of the nozzles start dropping out, and then that causes consistency issues because you're not laying down the same amount of cyan as you normally would, like print after print. So just
So a lot of DTF suppliers, they print a chart for Pantones. We do the other way around. We don't print a chart. We say, give us a Pantone you want us to match, and we do that. So rather working, saying, oh, this is our chart, you have to follow this, we work the other way around and say, you bring your color, you give us a Pantone, and we'll match it. So the hex code of a Pantone is very important in this. So make sure you're using the correct hex codes into your profiles.
I mean, yep, go ahead. Sorry, repeat that. CI lab colors.
Sorry, what was your question?
Have you heard of CI labs?
No, we only go by hex codes.
Is that a different code?
Yeah, so every Pantone has two formats, CMYK and RGB. So if you're printing RGB, you should follow that. And every Pantone also has various hex codes, so you need to try every to make sure that you're meeting color.
Yeah, so generally when we install a machine, one thing that we do is print a whole bunch of color charts, right? It's going to have a wide variety of like oranges and blues and greens, and it's an easy way for you guys to be able to hit certain colors consistently, right? But as mentioned, like as time goes on, you get more experience, you'll learn how to dial things in a little bit more, which is some of the things that Mel will be covering. Yep. I mean, we haven't seen that. We've had. We could talk to some customers that have had both here, but the opacity doesn't seem to really change. I mean, you're just laying down more ink.
The opacity is dependent on the percentage of white you use behind the colors. So increase your white to get more opaque prints.
So graininess is something that we see across Chinese and the Mimaki printers as well. It's one of those challenges. Certain colors are harder to hit than others. Mel, is that something that you'll be covering at all? Graininess?
Yeah, I'll be talking about that.
Okay.
You can your head alignment is one of the reasons behind grainy prints. If it is off, you're going to see a lot of graininess.
Is this the
speed comp, you're adjusting how the film feeds every pass. So that could affect that as well, but you're looking more at the drop position correction. You want to look at the drop position correction. Usually now it's going to ask you to print a 720 resolution and a 1440. And you will of course want to make sure that both lines line up directly on top of each other.
You can also
You'll see
reduce
value
number of
from
passes.
Yeah.
0 plus 20 to minus
I don't know
20.
if you want to say that.
And whatever
Yeah.
value is the best one is what you can input on the machine. Just make sure to input it in the correct spot because usually there's a standard and a high speed.
Yeah, and reducing the number of passes is, I mean, is it like blues and grays generally that you're getting the graininess in? Yeah, some greens as well. Yeah. So one way around that is to print it at a higher resolution so it does more passes, right? Yeah. Yep.
What's your thoughts on those little NICS color sensor things?
So we're actually going to be talking about that. Mel, you're covering the NICS tool in one. You're going to be covering the NICS tool in one of the sessions, correct? Yeah.
From my experience, it gives you a darker version.
Yep.
Do you mostly print in 720 or 1440?
1440.
Basically using twice the ink, right?
No, I don't. Actually, when you print at a higher resolution,
I wouldn't say that you're using
No.
twice the, I'm not sure how the algorithm works for that, but you are more thoughts per square inch, but I'm not.
The artwork needs to be at a minimum of 300 DPI as well.
Yeah, so when printing at a high resolution, the pass counts do increase, but you're using a lot more smaller dot sizes.
Yeah. That also reduces the
I did a lot
graininess.
of photographic printing, so it's a similar process.
yeah, and that might be a question for maybe for David, but yeah, to my understanding, by printing with the higher resolution does not mean you're necessarily using that much more ink, if anything at all. But yeah, it's something else that he can cover.
No?
You don't find that you're using any more ink when you go with the higher resolution?
We've never even counted that.
Yeah.
It's at least.
You are adding a bit more print.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it slows it down. Yeah, and that's what helps with some of the graininess and some of the colors.
Yes.
So.
Artwork drives a lot of the factor in getting a grainy print.
And that's another issue. You know, some of your clients will send you artwork, and it's in
People
300.
they click a picture of an artwork and they send us that printed without a background. I'm like, okay.
So if you're not building the artwork in the proper resolution, you're never going to get a good print, right? So there's
You
a
do a lot of half-tone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do a lot of halftones.
Yep.
Catalink has a feature in it to create, if you have a glow around, say if you have a letter and there's a glow around it, Catalink has a feature to convert the glow into a halftone.
Are those some of the things that you're going to be covering?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time figuring out.
No. One second.
So Catalink has a feature to convert the glow into a halftone. That's what I was told.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, speaking of resolution, does that apply to pixelated artwork, no? So like, if I work completely in Illustrator, it's all vector-based PDF, I'm not doing resolution. So, and you mentioned that you print in RGB,
Yes.
but using X-Codes.
Yes.
So why would not printing in like make a better color from a white paper printer?
I don't really know the reason behind it, but what we've known and seen is with printing RGB format, we've been able to hit the right colors.
And that's not just in DTF. That's been, for DTG, it's always been like that. I mean, with your guys, AUNs, like, you guys are printing, all your files are setting up in RGB? Yeah?
DTG my company uses DTG, but the ink came in RGB. But with the DTF printer, it's coming in CMYK.
Like, I know with the brothers, the Epson DTG machines, they all print you always want to set up the file in RGB. I don't know why. Do you have any idea? Mel?
To be honest, no, I don't.
Color gamut is paper and RGB.
Okay, is that why?
And then when it has to remap inside of find that color gamut, it has a little place to grab onto, so you get a bit of you get more color than you can achieve using that color space of RGB.
Yeah.
So
smaller color space.
Yeah.
We have that visual color thing.
Especially the black prints are more, the black is more deep when you're printing RGB.
Okay, cool. So actually, so I don't know if you can see the blue at the top of this film here. This is 100 cyan, nothing else. That's what I get. CMYK PDF.
Right.
So I'm just trying to, it's color conversion.
Well, 100, yeah, like it's almost like when you're printing black, for example, in CMYK, you know, usually you're better to have some percentage of each of the CMYK values in there as opposed to just 100% fade. You'll actually get a better black if you include the cyan and the yellow in the mix. So just because you're telling the printer to put out 100% cyan doesn't mean you're going to get blue. Does that make sense?
Well, no, it doesn't.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Nothing else. You get a great light blue.
Yeah, I can't see that from here, but yeah. We'll take a look at it. But
Yeah.
there's so many variables. I mean, even when you open a file in Illustrator, the default color space is Adobe 1998 or 1988 RGB swap or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's the default color space. So sometimes, as soon as you open a file in there, like you open a raster image in Illustrator and then you close that raster image, you've actually chopped off a bunch of the color space just by opening and closing the file. So this is a big rabbit hole. I think we have to get in and have some people do an actual training class for everybody. Yeah, it's a complex thing, and I'm not well versed enough to really do it myself, unfortunately.
Yeah, because everything I've read is it's like PNGs and JPEGs for a CMYK printer.
Well, that's the challenge, right? Because like your anything web is RGB, right? Your computer monitor is RGB, but your printer is CMYK. So you already have a problem right there. In trying to like looking at your computer monitor and expecting that your print's going to look like.
And that's why you only CMYK cyan at 100 and test that to see if it's my eye or what's not. And it doesn't come out.
Yeah, but unless you can go to the printer and do it on the printer, you're including a software component. Right? You printed that, you output that through a RIP, right?
Sorry.
You output the file through a RIP, right?
Well, I export it as a PDF with Illustrator.
Yeah. So printers are really dumb. They do whatever we tell them to do. I mean, that's just the reality of it, right? So, for example, like on some printers, you can go to the printer itself and say, print me CMYK, and it will come straight from the printer. So there's no software interpretation. There's no color management interpretation. There's no risk. Pardon me?
I thought the best spot colors before. Because I do all the colors I use with our DTF printer. I spot colors because we do a lot of anthem matching.
Right.
And it seems to some results are wildly different.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the variable is the software to rip the profile, right? It's not coming straight from the device, right? So what your workflow looks like, I can't really say, but that's what's happening.
Yeah, I try to keep everything CMYK. I don't like
Yeah.
like the Illustrator default. I don't use the default. I have everything it's CMYK profile.
In Illustrator, as
Oh,
opposed
yeah,
to
yeah.
the RGB color space.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, even on Photoshop, when bringing something into edited, I use Photoshop.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not well versed enough to answer that for you, but
You know?
we have a couple people who are pretty good at that, so maybe on the sidebar.
Okay.
Right.
Yep. Oh, sorry.
What do you export your files as?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
What do you, like, what file types you use to throw into the RIP?
So
Like, are you using PNG? Are you
PNG minimum 300 dpi is recommended to put
PNG
in there.
is, yes.
I do notice that PDF,
We use PNGs.
yeah,
Yes.
PDF tend to make colors darker. They will change them.
Yeah.
But
Same
as a PDF vector file, if you're trying to print like a really fine print, a PDF vector file would be the way to go, because in CAD, like, there's actually a way to view the raw data and how the pixels drop, and you can actually see how finer it is on a vector file. Now, when you have a bigger picture, you don't have to worry about that.
Yes.
You guys mentioned the RGB color space. Shouldn't there be a bunch of
Sorry, I didn't get it.
For example, like the super white colors or highlighter colors.
He's saying,
Repeat it for everybody's benefit.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people actually.
I think, was your question if you're printing in RGB, is there a whole bunch of colors that you're not able to hit? Is that what you're saying?
I think with RGB, there are a lot of colors we're able to hit. It's with CMYK is the problem that a lot of colors, especially the darker colors like the deeper reds and the oranges, the yellows.
black.
Yeah, the true black also we're not able to hit with using CMYK format. With DTF technology, you're not able to print neon anyways. But with, of course, RGB is a different problem when you're printing neon, but we've never felt the need or we've never been asked to print neon, and which we cannot do anyways on the DTF printers.
Yeah, I mean, like for example, one of the newer machines that we brought in, they have spot color neon capability, right? You're starting to see that now. Again, China always comes out with the technology first. They design it today, they release it tomorrow, and then they let all of us deal with the headaches. But so that's something that you're already starting to see in some of those machines in the field, is that they have spot color fluorescence, but they're not mixing anything to hit that. So you'll have a spot color fluorescent magenta, yellow, orange, or pink, right? Yeah, those usually the four
spot colors.
But they're spot
not
colors.
mixing it. The ink is that way, and it just gets prints right away.
Yeah, again, you have 4 colors, and you're trying to hit everything in a Pantone book that I think is comprised of 9 colors. So the amount of combinations, you just can't hit every single color. And that's why if you could, there was a time when we were running our DTG shops, we had 30 brother machines, and there was a breast for cancer like pink that they wanted us to hit, and it was a massive run, and we printed it over and over and every single color, and we couldn't hit that exact pink. And I got to the point where we just had to tell the customer, like, we can't do it. Like, the digital machine is not capable of doing it. So, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So Rob will send these the presentations to everybody who signed up with an email. Okay. Any other questions? Everybody getting hungry? Okay. Awesome.
Sorry.
What's that?
Did anyone explain the cap tops about the rubber?
I don't know.
In this?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'll just.
Should.
So just one maintenance item on the Mimaki machines that I just want to make sure people understand is when replacing the cap top, at the bottom, when you remove it from the machine, there's a little rubber stopper that's there. You want to make sure to take that off and put it on your new one that you receive. On our website, it does show a picture of it as well, and it should be in the manual. It's just make sure you do swap that over, because if you do forget it, you're going to allow air to introduce inside, and it's not going to clean properly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Amit.
Thank you. Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
for having me.
If anyone has any additional questions, feel free to pick Amit's brain or any of the techs, and hopefully you'll leave here with more knowledge when you came. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.